Welcome to the FiPL Farm Diaries, brought to you by the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority. FiPL stands for Farming in Protected Landscapes, a programme funded by Defra that helps farmers and land managers in England's national parks and national landscapes access funding for projects supporting climate, nature, people and place. In each episode, we'll dig into a particular part of a project that's received FiPL funding. And while we focus on one theme at a time, every story is part of a much bigger picture, showing how these projects and people are working together to shape the future of farming in the Yorkshire Dales landscape. Join us as we meet the people making a difference and discover how farming in protected landscapes is delivering for the Dales, one story at a time. Hello and welcome to a special bonus episode of the FiPL Farm Diaries. So we've done 12 episodes now on the various different FiPL projects that have gone on across the Yorkshire Dales National Park, and Defra have recently announced the extension of the funding, which is brilliant. So in this episode, we're going to speak to the FiPL team at the Yorkshire Dales National Park. We've got Meg Schofield, Mealin and Jonny Walker. And we're going to go through the ins and outs of applying for FiPL funding, and then we're going to have a chat about the wider role of the farming team and various other teams at the Yorkshire Dales National Park, because I think there's quite a few people that don't know what they do and what's available to them, and they're doing an absolute amazing job at this team. So have a listen and get in touch if you would like to know more. Right, good morning team.
Morning.
Here we are for a bonus episode of the FiPL Farm Diaries. So this episode we're going to talk about the new round of funding, which is exciting, and we're going to have a little chat about the wider parks farming team as well. So who wants to kick off then and tell us the exciting news about the new round of FiPL funding?
You going for it?
Yeah. So we've just officially been told that we've got another 3 years worth of FiPL funding. We've been told our budget for this year coming, and that there aren't any planned changes to how the programme works. And then we've been given an indicative budget for the next 2 years after 26, 27.
Brilliant. So am I right in thinking this is slightly different to the normal announcements because it's like a 3-year job, is that right?
Yep.
Through to 2029, and it's usually only year rolling, is that right or not?
Yeah, so when the programme originally came out, we had 3 years worth of funding.
Okay.
And then it's just been as Defra have been with their business planning, and they've just given us a year's rolling extension. But this year they've told us we've got 3 years worth of funding.
Brilliant. So that's really good then, because some of these projects can be a little bit longer, which hopefully people will get a lot out of. Great. So in terms of then this new round of funding, talk us through the sorts of things that you are looking to fund and how that fits in with the parks management plan objectives then. What are the parks management plan objectives? That is the question.
Well, there's multiple objectives. So, and they cover everything from nature.
I've got the paper.
Fruit. It's got the paper. Look at this. I mean, they cover community, nature, access, farm businesses. The document is available on our website, so we encourage everyone to have a look at that. Because one of the parts of FiPL is it has to meet at least one of the management plans. If it can meet several, then you get a higher score. So the idea is to meet as many as possible, but it also needs to meet the themes, doesn't it?
Yeah, the themes, which are people, place, climate and nature. So within your agreements you need to cover one of those areas as well. Usually an applicant does cover one of those.
Yeah. Brilliant. So they need to swap on that document then before they get in touch with you guys. So let's just talk about then the application process, because every single person that I've interviewed said that it was relatively straightforward and that you guys were all brilliant in helping them. But somebody that's never applied for a FiPL grant before, where do they start? What do they need to do?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, you can go on our FiPL website and all the documents are there that you could possibly need. If you were inclined to do all the reading around it, then you could do, but obviously we are there to kind of have that initial conversation with somebody to say, this is what you're going to have to think about, this is where you can find the forms. But first things first, a phone call with one of the advisors, our information's all on the website. Then you can find the inquiries form on the website, which is literally just an A4 sheet of paper. All you're doing is filling in your name, your contact details. We might need your SBI, so your single business identifier, just so that we can have a look at your land holding and see where you are and check that you're in the national park boundary for starters. and just a bit of information about what you're interested in. It just helps to then sort of, can either give you another call then or just arrange to have a meeting, and we'll literally come out on farm, which tends to be the best thing. Just come out on farm, have a little look around, because even if you've got one idea, you might not have thought of other things that FiPL can fund. And then we can then help to build an application with the farmer, just to help build the score up if, say, they're not quite scoring high enough, or just a bit of it's very informal really. It's just a bit of a chin wag to start with.
It's an initial conversation, isn't it? So
but brilliant that they've got that support from you guys as well, though. Everybody said that was invaluable to people, just that, I don't want to call it hand holding, but just so you know you're getting it right. Like, it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It's the difference between all the sort of, rural payments agency. If you're applying to countryside stewardship, you don't tend to have somebody on the ground telling you what you can or can't apply for, and you don't often tend to find out whether you've got that in your agreement until it literally comes through on an email months down the line. So that's what we try and do, really, so get out to see everybody, and you find that you end up building a much more, better value for money agreement, really, for having chatting to them. So.
And following on from that, we've got a big team. It's not just the FiPL team. So we may come out with our historic environment officer or our wildlife officer, trees and woodlands. So we've got lots of different specialisms that get involved to make sure things are happening in the right place, and that you understand exactly what it is you need to do to get the best for your farm holding. We are currently inviting inquiries in, but we are still wrapping up this current financial year's applications. So, we may not be able to get back in touch with inquiries to do those initial site visits until April. But, the earlier somebody gets in touch, the better. So, we're quite happy to start receiving inquiries and get them on our pipeline.
Brilliant. And I can't remember which farmer it was that told me that he'd heard about FiPL through a meeting that he'd done, like a parks meeting, and he'd gone on to put some hedges in. Are you planning on doing any of those this time or not? Are you hoping people are going to get in touch with you?
So the farm team will be doing some what we call our update meetings.
Yes.
They're just waiting for more details on the SFI and capital grants. Just so it's a more meaningful update meeting and everything's coming in the same place. So yes, we will probably attend those.
Brilliant.
But
we just have to be careful when we're funding hedges. Previously we've funded quite a lot of hedging and tree planting, that kind of thing. It's a really good way of ticking off the nature climate side of things in the FiPL themes. The only thing is we have to be careful not to fund what another scheme could fund.
Absolutely.
So capital grants, even if they're closed, Defra don't want to see us just funding hedges just because other schemes are closed. But what we can do is kind of build them into a wider scale project. So, people who are looking to do rotational grazing and create paddocks, we're looking at including hedges in there and maybe making the hedges, a wider hedge or a seed corridor in the bottom, just to sort of add a bit of, it's just that additionality of what FiPL can build on, the stewardship can't build on. So.
Well, everybody in that episode about hedgerows and trees, exactly as you said, Megan, they'd all used it to split the fields up so they could graze better. So okay, that's a really good point. So when we were pulling this podcast together and looking at who we were going to interview and what projects we were going to cover, I started off by looking on your website, and on there is, as you just said, Meg, a list of everything that you've ever funded in the parks under the FiPL grants. So that is another really good place for farmers to start, isn't it? And just see the sorts of things that people are applying for and getting past and that kind of thing. But if we just whiz back through the episodes that we've done, so many, and bearing in mind we've had at least 3 farmers on each episode, so that gives you an idea of how many projects are going on. We've had rotational and mob grazing. So that was like electric fencing and splitting fields up in various different ways. We had water resilience, so that was mobile water systems and a little bit of improving soil health to help infiltration, that kind of thing. Audits and surveys, that was a little bit of it took me by surprise, that one, because when I think of audits and surveys, I think carbon auditing, biodiversity, but actually we interviewed the Orton Fells cluster group and they'd done financial auditing there, which was just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant to hear. Soil health, again, there was some really interesting projects on there. Practical habitat creation, a lot of curlews on there, but I'm not complaining about that because they are excellent. Conservation, restoring heritage. So talk to us a little bit about barns, and there was dry stone walls on that as well, because there's a little bit, especially the dry stone walls, that was under countryside stewardship as well. But the farmer that we spoke to, his was under a triple SI, wasn't it? That sheepfold. Just talk us through sort of that package of stuff, as it were.
Yeah. So with the barns and other traditional farm buildings, we actually already have a pipeline. We've got quite a lot of inquiries that have been rolling on for the last few years. So going forwards, for barns, we're only really going to consider ones that meet our management plan objectives. So that's if they're in the 2 conservation areas for barns, which is Littondale and Swaledale.
Okay.
Or if it's a listed building or a building that's on the at-risk register.
Okay.
So that we're focusing on those ones that really need attention to meet our management plan objectives.
Okay. Excuse my ignorance, would a farmer know if one of their barns was on an at-risk register? What does that mean?
So it's something that if a farmer didn't know if their building was at risk, they can still inquire to us. That's where we then obviously take it forward and use that consultation process internally to know.
Fine. Okay. Yeah. Brilliant. So then walls, let's just touch on that, because it was Chris Fawcett that we spoke to. I can remember his name because it's my maiden name. Chris Fawcett, who we spoke to, and that sheepfold that he restored was in a triple SI, which is why it could go through FiPL and not countries. Is that right?
Yeah, we've done quite a lot of bits of walling that has been on triple SI land that wasn't eligible to get into any other scheme because they didn't have any other management options on the land. Was that the same for your agreement holders?
Yeah. So with that, it's usually where their management is going to protect the triple SI rather than it about restoring the wall.
Yes.
So that has to go into their management plan that goes into the agreement.
Yeah.
And then specifically with the sheepfolds, they're on the Historic Environment Register, so they're actually going through as a historic project.
Yes.
To do with maintaining that cultural heritage.
Yeah.
So they're a bit above and beyond your general dry stone wall.
Yeah. It was Bonnet as a sheepfold. He made a really good job of it.
Yeah, he's done another one since, and it looks.
Has it? Yeah. No, it was fantastic, and it had been there longer than his family had as well. So that just goes to show, doesn't it, the historic importance of it.
Our local assessment panel have sort of a steer on how many barns we can fund. So each year they agree how much of the FiPL grant we can apportion to barns. So it's always been 250,000. It's likely to be the similar again because we've got similar amount of money this year, but that's yet to be confirmed. It's still early days, but that just kind of also reiterates the importance of those barns that are sort of scoring the highest. They're the ones that get prioritised for that 250,000 because it doesn't go a long way.
No, it won't go far.
That's about 4 barns, isn't it?
Yeah.
And just following on to that, when you talk about the scoring process, so the way it works with barns is, we get the inquiry in, our barns conservation officer, he goes out and does an assessment of it, and he develops a score, and then we also have additional scoring that sits on top of that, and then we come up with a priority list. So if your barn's not scoring at the higher end of that, then it's not likely to go ahead.
Fine.
But get your inquiries in.
Yeah. You can but ask, can't you? And like you say, the thing that I'm getting through from all this is that you have to build a bigger picture. It's not just, I want to do this. There's got to be a bigger picture around it. Yeah. Okay, fine. So then we had diversification. Who did we have on that? We had Cheese and the accessible barn up in Naby. Opening farm gates, that was all about public access, visits for school kids and disadvantaged adults as well on that one. Hedgerows and trees, we've already discussed sort of the nuances around that. Is there anything else you guys want to say around hedgerows and trees?
I guess the only other thing is we've had it in the past where, aside from splitting out your fields for paddock grazing, a lot of people have done sort of the riparian tree planting. So that sort of planting along the riverside is another really good way of sort of building into a project. Say if you wanted to do diversification, but it was like solely diversification and we just couldn't quite get the score built up, you can then look at things like riparian planting, because often then that bit of land tends to be sort of either non-agricultural or, you know, it's not productive, it's a really good place to look at planting hedgerows and trees. And also the benefit to the watercourse then is, you know, massive. So that's just one, probably some advice to anyone really looking at a FiPL application is there's always some way you can build in that nature climate, even if you think that you can't.
Just to add on to that, with the diversification projects, they hit a specific one of the outcomes in our themes, and any projects that are hitting that outcome, they can't meet any other themes, and they have to meet at least one other theme.
Okay.
So a diversification project has to be broader than just that diversification project.
Yes.
So I mean, that can be educational visits or nature, climate. And then with diversification, we'd always expect some kind of business case, a business plan. So, you know, having your research done. But again, we're here to talk about, you know, we can advise on what that is and what that means when you get in touch. So
it's public money at the end of the day.
It is, absolutely.
The LAP, Defra, we want to see that it's going to people that have looked into this business strategy and they know that they can deliver it. And, you know, 5 years down the line, the business is still going strong, basically. Rather than, you know, you get the money, it works for 3 to 5 years and then, you know, that's it.
Nothing ever comes of it.
Yeah.
Well, that was I got some free cheese out of that interview.
Complain?
Yeah. Right, and then the last two. So the last episode is out tomorrow, actually, but the last week's was farmer collaboration. So again, the Autumn Fells cluster group, and that ties into hedges as well. The connectivity that they'd built across that land in that group was amazing. And the stuff that lot had done was incredible. And we had Pasture for Life on that as well. And then the benefit of a farmer network, so sort of peer-to-peer learning and knowledge exchange for the farming community as well. So anything to say on that sort of less capital side of things? I know the Autumn Fells have done a lot of capital stuff and all the rest of it, but maybe not so much with the networks. That's very much about building a community for the farmers and all that kind of thing. Have you got anything to say on those types of things?
I was just going to mention the fact that FiPL is largely it's a capital based project, so we only have a small amount of sort of what they call revenue money, which goes towards sort of paying fees for people to deliver projects. So, you know, the likes of Farmer Network and Pasture for Life, like I say, it's non-capital, but then that means that money's allocated to revenue, and we've got a very small budget for that. So it's crucial because it obviously is. You're getting information to big groups of people in sort of a good, it's good value for money, isn't it? But we have to be careful that we don't fund too much because the money's just not there. So I think it's, you know, anybody who's looking to sort of go down the sort of non-capital route, FiPL wise, we've just got to be really careful what it is that's being delivered. Is it being delivered elsewhere already? Because, you know, at that point, we probably don't need to be funding it again. And it's just making sure that you've looked at the gap in the market, so to speak, in terms of like, what do the farmers need right now? Or, you know, for the next 3 years going forward. And making sure that information's getting to them.
And again, a part of that is in your FiPL application, you need to talk about the legacy and how beyond what we're funding, you know, how that work is going to continue. So if it is a farm cluster group, we'd want to see what your plans are to continue working as a cluster and funding that beyond FiPL.
I think those cluster groups are crucial for accessing this funding going forwards, whether it's FiPL, whether it's landscape recovery, whether it's private finance. Like those groups are that tend to be the people that are getting access to that sort of money. So it is really crucial, but you've got to have someone facilitating it. It's got to be that ongoing facilitator. So
that was something that came up in both the Crosby Raven Parish Tree Group and the Autumn Fells Cluster Group, was the role of that facilitator, because with the best will in the world, farmers are busy people. They're not going to get on and organise a cluster themselves. So it is important, isn't it? And short of relying on volunteers, which are amazing, but you know, there's not that many people that can volunteer that much time, is there? So that's really good advice to anybody thinking about that then. Brilliant. So anything else to say about FiPL before we move on to the wider farm team at the parks? Well, all the teams actually, because they all sort of roll into one, don't they? But
I suppose just some key points. One of them is that FiPL can't fund anything that's got a statutory obligation, and you know, we'd need to see that you've got all your permissions and consents and stuff in place before an application comes in.
Just before we move on then, so because not everybody might know what statutory obligation might mean, but it might be things like, say you've put a planning application in and it requires, say, I don't know, 10 trees being planted alongside that. We can't then fund those 10 trees to be planted.
Okay.
That's one example. There's other things, you know, if you own some triple SI land and say Natural England are saying you need to do this work to get this into a better state, you know, more favourable, FiPL shouldn't really be funding that because you've got an obligation, you know, under legislation to do that.
Consents. We have an internal consultation for any capital works, so they would flag up some of the consents that might be needed, or we would, but you know, it would be on you guys to go and get those consents.
And before the application comes in as well.
Okay.
So it does take time, which is why we say get in touch sooner than you probably
might
would
think.
do.
Going back to the tree planting, if you're wanting to plant in the coming planting season, your site might need a vegetation assessment, which needs to be done in June, July. So if you are thinking of tree planting, then get in touch earlier, because if you get in touch later in the year, then you know you may miss that window. And then like with the national schemes, projects are paid in arrears. So and then they're on an annual budget. So you would have, if you got to the agreement stage, you would have a certain amount of items you'd have to complete in a year, and you'd have to have them done that year and paid for. But
you can claim in sort of stages. So you don't have to do the whole project and then claim, because you know, cash flow wise, we know what it's like on a farm. You've always got to have money coming in, haven't you? So you can do an interim claim. Once that's paid, which is we have payment runs every 2 weeks, which it's nice. You can get your claim, as long as the evidence is there, that money's coming through to you fairly quickly. That you can then use that sort of bankroll the next stage of the project. So anyone that's got concerns about not having the money in the bank to do the work, as long as you've got the bit to do sort of the first few stages, obviously within reason. We don't want to be saying here's a pot of money and they can't deliver it. But it's just things to, and
we can agree that in advance. I've done that before with some agreement holders, where we've kind of agreed when they're going to make claims. So it makes sense for us so that we're the project's not a risk for us, but at the same time it gives them that flexibility to keep the project going.
And you can also utilise matched funding as well. As long as it's not double funding for the same item, you can, if it can be a private matched funder, it can be from another pot of money. So,
in fact, we encourage it.
Quite right.
It increases the score, and there are other organisations out there that help. So, a lot of
it just opens it up to more people, basically. So we always just say, don't we? Even if you think you're not eligible, get in touch. Even, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a smallholder, whether you're a community group, there might be a chance that you are eligible. Don't let the money side put you off, because there's other ways around it. It's just worth having that conversation, really.
Definitely. There's every farm that I interviewed said it was far better in terms of getting the money into your bank than any other thing that I'm involved with. So I don't think, like you say, if you've got enough just to make a start, then you can sort it after that, can't you? I think the crux is just get in touch. If you've got an idea, just get in touch, isn't it? And then you guys can take it from there, or advise from there, as it were. Okay.
Definitely.
Right then, talk to me about the wider farming team, because I grew up in the national park and I can't say that I was aware of the wider farming team, because you all go under the radar just doing brilliant things without making a song and dance about it. But tell us, what other stuff are the farming team doing for the parks?
So as you say, we've got a farm team and then a FiPL team. So us here present, and then we've also got another officer, Joy, work on FiPL. But then we also have 3 full-time equivalent farm officers. And they basically help with catchment sensitive farming. They can give advice on all the national schemes, so SFI, higher tiers, and they sometimes support with some of the surveys and stuff like that as well. So anything to do with getting into the national grants, you can get in touch with them if you need some advice and some support.
Okay. For free?
Initially for free. It depends on how much
you want them to do. Yeah. Okay. But that's good to know that those types of people are there, because I would never know. I would have thought they would have had the knowledge, but I didn't know how much support they'd be able to give. So that's good.
Yeah, and I think individually each person, whoever you speak to, has got such a wide range of knowledge and in quite a lot of depth as well. So like, you know, you might pick up the phone and speak to somebody who has so much knowledge about species rich grassland, and say you want to get your land into the species rich grassland option in SFI and you don't know how to go about it. They are basically there to advise you on the next steps to take, who you need to be speaking to, so a natural land advisor, and we've got all those connections then, so we can help with making those connections to then sort of build your land into this like basically perfect scheme when it becomes available.
That's a really good point, Meg. It is about, there's obviously your teams here at the national parks, but there's a lot of other organisations in the park that maybe people don't know about. And you're right, you guys having that knowledge of actually you'd be better off speaking to this person, here's the contact details, makes a big difference, doesn't it? Then you're not faffing about trying to find, you know, Googling, as it were.
Yeah, I think every member of the team has a little bit of different expertise, so and we can share that across the team. So my background is trees and rivers, really. Whether it's planting trees or whether it's managing woodland. The same with Laura, so she knows a lot about managing woodland as well as you know, all the national schemes. Likewise, Meg has the farming background and brought up on a farm, still farms now, so she's got that experience to bring, and that's the same with all of us. So if you ask us a question when we're out on the farm and we don't know what it is, we can go back to the team and get it answered for you. So we might not know there and then, but you know, if you've got any questions, we can 9 times out of 10 answer them for you.
Right then, let's talk about the other stuff that your farm team do in terms of speaking at other people's events, other organisations' events, and updating people in the parks with news and stuff that they need to know about. Let's have a word about that.
So, as I previously mentioned, they do farmer update meetings, and so they haven't done any recently just because there hasn't been any information. So they'll only do it when they have some key information to come out. And they usually have those in 4 or 5 different locations around the park, to try and make it accessible for most people. And then we also have a mailing list, so you can get in touch and provide your details and give us permission to contact you when we have updates. They give out newsletters when they've got key information. And we were just talking earlier, weren't we, about how it's not a case of you get spammed with stuff regularly. It's when it's pertinent, when there's
something to say,
valuable information to come.
So how do they do that on the website, or do they have to actually email somebody to be added to that list?
So the farm team email address is on the website, so you can just email through saying that you want to be
added to that list. Brilliant. Okay, cool. And then talking to I've seen your farm advisors at other people's events, like Farmer Networks events and that kind of thing. So they know this stuff, don't they? And they get about, as it were.
Yeah, we're always talking to each other. You know, it's not just us working in a pod and then the Farmer Network and all these groups. We are all talking to each other, and it's, you know, if we've got something we want to deliver on, but also someone else is delivering something nearby. A lot of the time we do join up because, you know, best will in the world, farmers can't be in 2 places at once, and you know, you do get a bit stalled of all these different events and wondering which one's the right one to go to. So if we can make it as, you know, we're joined up and we're both delivering, then you don't feel like you're missing out on one because you've gone to another. So where we can, we do try and join up, really.
Brilliant. Especially the Farmer Network, we usually try and get an idea of what their events are so that we can either tag onto them or we can feel a gap. You know, if they're not covering something, we can go, right, we'll do this, and try and make sure we're not clashing on dates, because that has happened in the past.
Oh, you could go to something every day, couldn't you? There's that much stuff on, so okay.
I think they've run also slurry wizard training, haven't they?
Nutrient management planning through, I think that's through the catchment sensitive farming, that they do run specialist
workshops and workshops.
So
we try and make sure, whether it's FiPL, whether it's the farm team, that the events that are being run are usually because of the fact that something's changing in legislation, the government are pushing for something, and that's where the money's going to be. So that, you know, we're there to kind of help the farmers and steer them in that direction. But obviously, rather than just send them in that direction and hope for the best, we're providing them with the information. So if you need to have a nutrient management plan, okay, we're going to help you to develop that. And if you need more help, we can help you do that. Or if you think you're fine off you go, but we're here at the end of the phone if you need us. So it's making sure those events are tailored to what's going on in the rural sector in that specific moment in time.
Yeah, brilliant, good stuff. So if somebody puts in an application for FiPL funding, what's the process for the approval on that, as it were?
So it depends on what value it is. So if it's less than £10,000 of grant funding that you're asking for, and it comes into the team, we assess it in the team, and we'll come back to you if there's anything that we need with that application that you've not sent. We'll ask you for that, and there'll be a decision made. If it's above £10,000, then that again comes into the team, but it gets assessed by the local assessment panel, which is made up of individuals from across the park covering different areas. So there's areas in terms of where they are in the park, but also what kind of aspect they represent. So it might be farming, or it might be the national park, so they might be a member, or it might be community access, so they'll have different experiences within the panel as well. And they'll assess your application against all the criteria that we've spoken about earlier. Some of the panel, we've mentioned earlier, or we talked about earlier, that some of the applicants are sometimes a little reluctant to apply when they know somebody on the panel. But there's no problem with that. If there are any interests that overlap with panel members and applicants, then those panel members would sit out of any decisions, for example. But it's quite a fair process, and everyone kind of inputs into those meetings. And if there's any adjustments that need to be made to an application, then again we'll come back to you with those before an agreement is put in place.
So that's good then. So it's not just a straight yes or no. It's a we just need to change this and then you're away sort of thing, which is a lot different from some of the others, because it's just like a no. Computer says no. So that's brilliant. Okay, good stuff.
We also can do things which we call a forward view as well. So if we've got somebody's got a project and it's quite convoluted, or there's lots of different details, we can take it in advance to the local assessment panel and ask what their opinion on it is, what they would want to see in the application, discuss things which are called the intervention rates, which is the percentage that FiPL will contribute to the project. So the panel, as Jonny alluded to, this is quite a diverse group. So there's lots of different specialisms within that group. So sometimes a forward view can really bottom out some of those things. But when your application comes in, it's robust.
And, it's just ready to go.
And I think the important thing is as well is, yes, you've got this variety of people with different interests and different sort of views on an application, but at the end of the day it is still objective. Everybody's got to do a score for that application, and then it's kind of all taken into it's all just considered as one then, and obviously then usually they're approved, because obviously they've worked with the advisor up until then, so usually they're approved. There are times when they're not approved, but that's where it's important that you've got these different diverse people on the panel to say, well, maybe this is missing, and maybe you need to speak to this person. And actually that's the point where it's crucial to sort of have those connections with sort of probably the more professional groups. To say, if you've got a bigger application it's taken a bit more discussion and we're not quite sure whether it's quite ready for an agreement yet, you're then told maybe you need to go and speak to the accountant, or you need to get some more professional advice on this aspect. And that's where the kind of the professional side comes into it. So if you've not been in touch with your accountant and you've got a really big project coming up and you think that it's all going to work and that you've got the money to do it, but there's no evidence of that, that's usually where our local assessment panel will pick that up and say, well, has this been looked at? And then they'll say, once we've got evidence that this has been looked at, and we've got, like, say, a business plan, or just evidence that we've had those conversations, then we're basically happy to see that go through. And then we would then bring it to the next local assessment panel, the next meeting, which are either held every 6 to 8 weeks, and it, more or less it's approved at that point then, when it's ready.
Well, it's like different eyes see different stuff, doesn't it? It's good to have a diverse mix of people and stuff like that, because everybody's got ideas. And I imagine as well, when you've looked at an application for so long, you go a bit like, you can't see what what's in front
Yeah.
of you, can you sometimes? So it'll be good to have a different set of eyes on it and stuff. So
Yeah.
brilliant.
And I think looking at the quotes as well, because we've not really mentioned quotes, but obviously,
yes,
you know, if you've got a big application over £10,000 and it's going to the local assessment panel, each item in that project needs evidence of getting 3 quotes, which is a lot harder to do than people think. And actually, it tends to be the blocker of what, you know, it's the difference between getting an agreement and not getting an agreement. Because if you can't get 3 quotes to show that the quote that you're choosing is comparable, then, you know, you're probably not going to be able to get an agreement unless Defra are approving less than 3 quotes. But that's, you know, the LAP having an eye on those quotes to say, well, that looks quite a lot of money. Have you looked at other quotes? And that's where our job comes in to say, yes, we've got these 3 quotes. They're all comparable and this is the one that they've chosen. It's just that, you know, when you're in the moment and working on the application, you don't always pick up on stuff like that. And those people are there to kind of say, well, is that the right, you know, is this the right place for the money, or should it go in somewhere else?
And you go on, sorry.
I was going to say, at those meetings, in the LAP meetings, your advisor will be there. The person that you've been talking to is there, so we can ask the questions, answer the questions that the LAP might be asking, because we understand the application.
And that's what I was going to say as well, is that we give the local assessment panel the documents in advance, a week in advance. So sometimes they will ask us questions before the meeting. So we can go back to the applicant and go, this has been asked, can you give us this evidence or whatnot. So that's another way of getting that clarity before we go into the meeting.
It really sounds like everything is set up to help people succeed as much as you can. Like, you're not trying to trip people up at all, which is brilliant. It's refreshing, actually. Is that
basically anything that we've funded this year is essentially eligible next year. We've had no kind of new information to say what is eligible and what's not. Don't let anything put you off. If you think something's eligible, get in touch. If you think it's not eligible, get in touch. We'll see if there's something that we can do to make it eligible. We basically just want to encourage anyone and everyone to apply. Even, you know, the harder to reach farmers that as we call them, that are up the dale. If you think you haven't got time to put an application together and you don't have a computer, just most people have a phone. Give us a call. We can come up to you. Can bring a laptop with us. We can help write an application out if there's something eligible. We don't want anyone to feel disadvantaged.
Don't rule yourself out. Get in touch with us and we can work with you and try and find a solution to your
Definitely.
And I think if you can be open-minded as well, it just means that there's a greater chance of you getting a really good project put together. You know, we do know what we're talking about, and we want to help you. We want to help you to get a really good agreement in place. It just takes a bit of that kind of back and forth conversation and just being open-minded. Really, so.
Brilliant. Well, I'm delighted they've extended it, because the projects that we've had on the podcast have just been fantastic. So exciting times ahead.